During 2025, when a friend came to me and asked if I wanted to go with her to explore and look for the grave of her Patriot ancestor, I couldn't resist. Our adventure to find her Patriot, William, ended up taking several months and 2 trips to the Georgetown and Marion border, to an area known as the Neck. Of course, on our way, we planned to make several stops at historical markers and locations, especially if they dealt with the Revolutionary War, as her Patriot was part of Marion's brigade. During our first trip, one of our first stops was at Lanude's Ferry in Berkeley County, where Tarleton captured 100 horses, and his 150 dragoons demolished the Patriot cavalry, killing around 41 Patriots. During this scrimmage, Tarleton's men were also able to free 18 Loyalist prisoners who were captured earlier that day at Ball's Plantation.
He's been rusted my whole life, but it's beautiful.
Next, we stopped at the Sandpit Methodist Church, which, besides being an early church in Georgetown, is also a mother church to many other area churches. It is also close to the site of the scrimmage of Sandpit Bridge. It was near here and at the location of the once bridge where Marion had the bridge burned and ambushed Watson in a scrimmage that would result in 1 Patriot death and the death of 20 enemies before Marion and his men fled from cannon fire. Notably, the church is still a very active church in the community. Next, we drove to the Gabriel Marion marker, which documents the death of Francis Marion's nephew. This occurred after Gabriel's horse was shot out from underneath him. Initially, he was just being clubbed with muskets before someone recognized him. Then he was shot in the heart and killed instantly. During our first trip, we also drove by a plantation that was once adjacent to Christopher Gadsden's property, the man most known for being the designer of the Don't Tread on Me flag, which was used to symbolize the Revolution's ideals of resistance, unity, and defiance against the British.
How do you say that? Plantation what now?
Beneventum. Just like it sounds, girl. Most everything is sounded out around here. Except the French stuff. Now the French stuff.
On our way to the Neck, we also drove by Plantersville.
By planters' families to escape seasonal malaria on local riverfront plantations, many along with what now Plantersville Road left behind were large workforces of enslaved people of African descent who isolation nurtured and developed the Gullah, a West African rooted language and the culture found in the Low Country.
Of course, while in the area, we made a detour to see the beautiful ruins of the Prince Frederick Chapel, which was built in 1848 and was once a church for wealthy planters in the area. What's left of the church is now a beautiful remnants of the past. Unfortunately, it is now locked away to keep out ghost hunters and those who are wanting to vandalize what's left. During my research, I found out that the church is locally known as the Old Gun Church, as it was built by Philip and Edward Gunn. According to legend, one of the Gunn brothers died after falling from the roof of the church while renovating it. Some say screams can be heard coming from the church ruins. Others claim that they have heard phantom choirs of heavenly voices in the woods near the church. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, the beautiful ruins of Prince Frederick Chapel is definitely worth a visit. Before leaving the area, we drove past the Chicora plantation. The plantation was once the home of a staunch supporter of nullification and the 1856 to 1858 governor of South Carolina, Robert Alston. Notably, in his daughter Elizabeth's 1922 book, she wrote the following about living here. As I sit in the broad piazza, watching the closing of the day, I gaze into the vistas of moss-draped giant oaks. All is mystery, the mystery of nature, the mystery of ages. These oaks, still strong, still beautiful, have been generations past. Through their vistas, the gods of the day is sending his gleaming shafts as he has always done. But brighter to me than these last rays is the pageant of the past, which sweeps before me now. Scenes as intense as the flaming sky, incidents as tender as the fleecy clouds, years as dark and tragic as the leaden storm banks at the horizon's edge, but redeemed from utter despair by a courage and a sacrifice equal in splendor to its illuminary summits. In my memory are stored the beauty and pathos of these years. Shall I let all this die without a word? These pictures I have treasured, so full of beauty and color, shall I let them fade, even as the sunset into the gray oblivion? I cannot bring before you as clearly as I would the charm and glamour of the past, but I can give you at least a faint idea of the days that are no more. As our first trip took place on Sunday, we noticed that Mount Tabor Church was just letting out after service. So we decided to ask if we could look at their original church that is located behind their presently used sanctuary. The people here were so very nice and hospitable and even allowed us to go into their once used church. This small white sanctuary was built as the congregation's second church in 1881. However, the congregation here was organized in 1832 and originally worshiped in a log cabin. When members decided to replace the log cabin with this church, cypress trees were harvested from the nearby swamp. The logs were then floated down the Waccamaw River to nearby Bucksville in Horry County to be sold at Buck's Mill. Buck's Mill happened to be the first steam-powered lumber mill in the Southeast. The lumber was then hauled back by oxen to the site where the church now stands. Even the original church pews remain in this historic sanctuary and were hewn of the same wood. Of course, while we didn't find Patriot William on our first trip, we did make time to stop in Bucksport to visit a family graveyard hidden in the woods. Of the people laid to rest here are my friend's direct ancestors, Duke and Betsy, and Gabe and Mary. One interesting story involving one of these men occurred while they were serving in Monk's Corner. While there, he had received news from his wife that she was being harassed by a few men in the area. After he was denied permission to go home and see to the matter, he went AWOL and walked from Monk's Corner to home. After he finally made it home to check on his wife and stop the harassment, he walked back to Monk's Corner, where he rejoined his regiment after he was punished for some time with hard labor. Notably, 3 of Duke's daughters married 3 of Gabe's sons. Of course, my friend is related to both Duke and Gabe because of one of these unions.
never had a stone.
Next,
Aw.
we drove to a roadside graveyard located under a huge oak. There, we visited my friend's ancestor Benjamin and his wife Mantha. It was told to me that upon asking for Mantha's hand, Benjamin was told by his future father-in-law that before they could marry, he would have to build a house for Mantha, which he did. Like Duke and Gabe from the previous cemetery, during the war between the states, Benjamin also joined the cause. He joined the 26th South Carolina Infantry as a private, but before the end of the war, he had reached the rank of lieutenant. Mantha passed away many years after her husband in 1819. When she passed, she left behind 6 children, 38 grandchildren, and 19 great-great-grandchildren. Next, we stopped for some snacks before we headed to Britton's Neck, one of the oldest settlements in Marion County, which lies near the Pee River. The area was named after an early family who were in Carolina by 1697.
One of the oldest settlements in Marion County, Britton's Neck, lay between the Great and Little Pee rivers, extending northward from the mouth of the Little Pee. It was named for Francis, Timothy, Daniel, Moses, Joseph, and Philip Britton. Jesus. I named the whole family. It was settled in the neck about 1735 to 1736, and they were the sons of Francis Britton, who was in Carolina by 1697. That's pretty new. During the American Revolution, General Francis Marion, the most successful of the Patriot partisan leaders, made his camp and headquarters about 1.8 miles south-southwest on Snow Island. The island's named for the settler James and William Snow and is bounded by the Pee River, Lynch's River, and Clark's Creek.
Unfortunately, while we did try to see what we could of Snow Island, the road was flooded.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. I mean, I ain't scared of the water or nothing,
But I am.
During our first trip, while searching for Patriot William, we ended up going to several possible locations, which were beautiful resting places, but were not the resting place of Patriot William. Before giving up for that day, we drove down several roads and even asked a few locals. However, the day wasn't a complete waste of time. We saw some beautiful scenery, read about some interesting history, and even made a few more stops at some really neat locations before we headed home.
Journeys in South Carolina from 1801 on Methodist Bishop Francis Ashbury's often used ferry, and stayed at the home of his friends nearby. In 1811, the year before Francis Porter's death, Ashbury found Mother Porter keeping house at 87. His last crossing was January 1816, a few weeks before his own death.
PD was owned and operated by Francis Port, circa 1725-1812, widow of Thomas Port, who was a member of the Provincial Congress from Prince Frederick's Parish. This was a strategic crossing for Francis Marion, who fortified and used it frequently in his fall campaign of 1780 against British and Tories.
Yeah, in 1819, former South Carolinian Governor David R. Williams, son-in-law of John Witherspoon, obtained these ferry lands. In 1842, William Johnson acquired these lands, and in 1843, a post office named Johnsonville was established here. In use during the American Revolution, Witherspoon's Ferry is one of the sites where Francis Marion accepted command of the Williamsburg militia in 1780. Ownership of the ferry lands passed from Robert to John Witherspoon in 1787, and in 1802, John bequeathed, well, however you say that, bequeathed. That sounds awful. the land to Amwell Presbyterian Church. The church was closed by 1820.
It was actually on our way home that we stopped at one of my favorite stops during our first trip. That was at an old ferry to see a statue of Francis Marion. It is said that Francis Marion wasn't a proficient swimmer, but during the war he frequently crossed rivers like this one, even when the waters were high above his waist, which is actually what this statue depicts. Finally, the day before Easter, we were all able to get back together to continue our search for Patriot William. During our second trip, as soon as we reached Georgetown, we stopped at Hopsawee Plantation, a home which was built 40 years before the American Revolution. Besides being one of the major rice plantations in the area, it was also the birthplace of Thomas Lynch Jr., one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. While we didn't pay to tour the home, we did get the chance to talk to a living historian, explore the grounds, and have lunch at the plantation's tea room before heading back to Britain's Neck to look around and find Patriot William.
Thank you. We're going today to find his
Tell you, is that Poland?
Okay. He's buried
in Britain's Neck.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went a month ago, a couple weeks ago, private property trespassing, climbing over barbed wire fences, doing all kind of stuff to find a cemetery that he wasn't even buried in.
Yeah. Well, will you be interested to know that there's a book being written about the regiment?
Britain's Neck Regiment?
Yeah, exactly. By our commander.
Okay.
Now, true to regimental procedure or militia procedure, I alone am here today because the regiment is off, have mustered off. You see, almost all the men in the community able, and in the time of the American Revolution, loyal, were in the militia if they weren't in the regular army. And so when the militia was called out, then every man wouldn't report. If they did, that would leave the community vulnerable to Jesse Barfield.
Oh, gotcha. Right. Yeah, I've read so many things about them, how they held up in the neck somewhere after the war for many years because they refused to accept that the war had been won and over. They were just determined to, oh my, these people are nuts.
All kinds of stuff. Oh, yeah, definitely. So I alone am here today. The regiment's off fighting. But that book has not yet been published. Dusty, our commander, is writing it. He's a very good historian, and his wife has people who are in the regiment as well.
Woo! I might have jumped a little.
Yeah, this cabin was built about 1850 when this plantation was at its zenith at rice production. And 150-some slaves were on the place.
How many would have lived in just one cabin, do you know?
One or two families.
One or two families?
Yeah, probably two families lived in this one. This is one of the service cabins. Slaves that worked here were not connected necessarily to the rice field.
Yeah, they were house
They were
or land. Because they made everything here, right? Like the shoes and everything was made on
right.
the
Well, they
site.
had an industrial road.
This is your hat?
Yes, we had it wear this afternoon. Yeah, that there was an industrial road. There were three villages of such. The industrial road that they were very proud of, where they worked with metal, worked with wood, worked with leather. All these craftsmen were there. Then there was a row of field hands that worked the rice fields, which is the largest. And then this row served as a house. These cabins were all built alike, and one of them was the kitchen for the house. So this would be the work area. One was the laundry. Mine's next meal. So that's chicken and potatoes and onions and grits.
Nice.
Sausage.
Stew.
Oh, yeah.
That's pretty good.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Man, that's
You ain't roughing it.
Well, I didn't say anything about roughing it.
That's a good.
We do periods. Used it yet. That you take the shovel and go in the fire, put coals in there, and then you pot on top.
Oh, there you go.
That
Very
is
cool.
Coming in on Thursday and not leaving till Saturday. So we try to do one event a month. This month we're going to do build a house and build the furniture that went in it. But it was that type of door that would swing up against the brickwork.
Okay, so the bedroom would be a separate.
Right.
Okay, all right.
This is really a 3-room cabin
Okay.
with a working room and then 2 living spaces back here. This wall has been reconstructed to show that originally a wall went all the way across to the middle of the window there. Rope beds, these are period type beds. If you want to.
Yes.
That was my bed last night.
No.
That might be tough.
Yeah. Well, if your mattress is cushy enough,
Yeah.
then you wouldn't really notice.
The
You know,
rope is just the suspension.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is
Nice.
that's a rifle
Big-
frock.
Oh, rifle frock. Okay.
Or hunting coat is what it's called sometimes.
Gotcha. Look at the buttons.
Yeah, those are deer,
So
those are
cool.
deer antlers.
Antlers. Okay.
Enough slack to get that wrench through the rope down against the rail, and you twist it, hold it. This one's harder to tighten. That one, the ropes go through the rail, is very easy to tighten because you just put a pin in the hole to hold the rope while you work.
While trying to be granted a war pension, according to Patriot Williams' own testimony, he was born on March 9th, 1762, in Darlington, South Carolina, near Jeffreys Creek. According to William, the proof of this was once in a family Bible in his father's home, which had been burned by the Tories. In these later years, William recalled how his family had planned to move to Mississippi, but after getting only 15 miles from Wadesboro, North Carolina, a group of fellow travelers convinced his father to go elsewhere. So the family stayed in Anson County, North Carolina, for about a year. After this, young William and his family moved about 8 miles away to an area near Cartledge Creek. It was during this time that William's father was stationed at Flowers Gap on the Blue Ridge Mountains to keep the Native Americans from crossing. Notably, this is very critical to Patriot William's story, as many other men in the area share his name, but are from various places. According to William, in 1777, at the age of only 16, he entered service on behalf of his father for 2 years under Captain Hunter. However, during this 2-year period, William was only really active for about 8 months. Next, William joined under General Benjamin Lincoln's regiment, which marched to Cheraw, South Carolina, then to Long Bluff, to Orangeburg, and to the Black Swamp, which is now in Jasper County. While under General Lincoln, William was sent with 500 other men to Charleston. By June 20th of 1779, William found himself at the Battle of Stono's Ferry, which was a brief but intense engagement. This British victory resulted in the death of 34 patriots, 113 of which were wounded, and 155 which went missing. Somehow, William evaded capture that day, and after the battle returned to Charleston. From Charleston, William was sent to James Island to guard Hobcaw Creek and prevent the British from seizing Fort Johnson. After some time serving, William was allowed to go home on leave, though I'm unsure where home was at that time or if he was married by then. While at home, William learned that Horatio Gates was marching towards Camden, so William volunteered and joined. William said that when he joined Gates, Gates rode on a big stallion named Jack. Prior to the Battle of Camden, which occurred on August 16th of 1780, William recalled how Gates' regulars were positioned 8 deep, but upon being charged at by the British, ran. It was during this battle that William was cut on the forehead with a bayonet. It was noted that even at the advanced age of 72, the scar was still very visible. Regardless of his injury and becoming a POW, William was very blessed, as the Battle of Camden was devastating for the Americans, as 900 Patriots were killed. After becoming one of the 1,000 men taken prisoner, William recounted how he was kept under guard for around 5 days before being paroled. After gaining his freedom, William traveled to Haley's Ferry on the Great PD. It was there that William again joined, this time under Nathaniel Greene. During this period, William again found himself in action, this time at the Battle of Hobkirk Hill. This battle took place near Camden on April 25th of 1781, when Rawdon sailed forth and launched an attack on the Continentals. Confusion and loss of officers in Greene's ranks caused his line to fall apart. After this battle, 39 Patriots were found dead. The battle also resulted in a significant number of wounded and missing on both sides. It was here that William again became a POW, but this time he was sent to Charleston. As a prisoner of war in Charleston, William managed to escape by paying a few men 2 golden British coins, which he had hidden. Fortunately, the men were able to help William, as he was able to sneak past the guards. Soon after regaining his freedom for a second time, William again joined, this time under Colonel John Baxter. It was with Baxter that William marched to Marion's camp at Snow Island, where he remained until the British evacuated Charleston. According to William, his last skirmish occurred with the British at Waboo. This skirmish occurred in Manning, South Carolina on March 6th of 1781, a location that is now under the man-made Lake Marion. It was there that Patriot William and Marion's other men clashed with the British and Tory forces, numbering more than 500 men. It was during this scrimmage that Private Gavin James single-handedly held back an enemy advance, as William and the rest of Marion's men dispersed. Patriot William's own words are very important, as several patriots had his name and fought in the same area. In fact, one of these men frequently switched alliances, and another one also fought under General Marion. Besides serving as a Patriot soldier, during the war, William's home was burned by the Tories. As a result, he lost a few knives, forks, and spoons, a little copperware and crockery, 6 beehives, an axe, a pillow, canoe, 2 pots, a loom, a spinning wheel, and 20 hogs. Besides the devastation of war, during William's life, he married a lady by the name of Nancy, and together they had at least 7 sons and 5 daughters. While nothing more is known about Nancy, at the ripe old age of 81, Patriot William passed away on June 27th of 1843 at his home in Britton's Neck in Marion, South Carolina.
I told you he was the first one I walked up to the last time he was out here. I said, when I find him, I'm going to walk right to him.